All right, so today we have something cool. So no, I was coming into the office, uh, listening to CNBC, and I heard some compelling discussions around AI. And so, Lauren,
I'm here to.
you're here to help me move through that. So, in our team meeting, we talked a little bit about how to bring, like, when you're inspired out in the world, you hear something, how to use AI to help you create something from it. And so, in this case, we just used it to create an article.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is because we know that the ideal client that we want to spend time with, that multifamily owner and operator, cares about probably things that are happening on CNBC. So I would make the assumption that they also heard the same interview I heard.
Hmm.
And so all I'm doing is entering the conversation that they're already having in their mind and bring it back to multifamily. And what came from that is understanding this hype around AI. And they brought on somebody that had sort of an opposing view, which I think is really great and healthy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to see what he says.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when he was talking, I immediately thought, where is this going to go? And then it realized I got a lot of validation. I'm like, okay, we're doing the right things. We're modeling this the right way. And I think that's something we can bring to other multifamily owners and operators on how to move and navigate through that. So that was the purpose. And now we're hanging out and having a podcast about it.
Absolutely. And I didn't hear the same message this morning, so I came in. You came in all fired up, and I was like, okay, well, fill us in. Let us know what happened. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, let's actually just fill everybody in, and we'll write an article about it today.
Yeah.
So what do you mean when you say understanding the hype of AI?
So when I say hype, there's a lot of attention around it because obviously this is the big shift we're all going through, regardless if you think it's valuable or not. It's happening.
Right.
And it's happening like in greater exponential shifts than the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the internet, we built a lot of our applications on the PC before the internet was like PC, and then we went to sort of, I guess, internet, and then we went to mobile, and then we went to cloud, right? So AI is built on all of those things. So it's just exponentially faster. And with
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, really development community, things started to raise. So the conversation that I heard this morning was around the parallels to hype and like what happened in even the .com
Mm-hmm.
era, which was a lot of companies ramped up and there was a lot of hype,
Right.
and a lot of companies got hurt in that process. They didn't have GPS, they didn't have people weren't paying for credit cards online. There was a lot of trust issues. We didn't have cloud as much, and so there was good things that came about, but maybe wrong timing. And so a lot of people got hurt, I
Mm-hmm.
think, in that process. But there was some kind of parallels being drawn to a hype there. And so when I mention hype, I'm talking about like the Gartner hype cycle,
Yeah.
which really illustrates what happens in these types of movements. And we're at the peak probably of this in the hype cycle and probably even coming down. And in this trough of disillusionment, which is it's what it's called,
Right.
there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of, is this going to work? And until things sort of normalize and become standard, like
Mm-hmm.
cloud. Most software today is cloud based.
Right. It's just second
There
nature.
was a time when that went through that process. Where's
Mm-hmm.
my data? How's it going to be used and all that kind of
Is it
stuff.
safe? Yeah.
Um, so that's what I mean by hype.
Right.
Um, I think what I could best answer that question with is in his response, he was indicating, for so many years we had Google dominating search,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the big tech companies dominating a lot of these movements. And so with AI, it really sort of democratized this pursuit of having a chance to be a category leader again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have open source, you have Meta, you have Google, OpenAI, you have all these, the NVIDIAs, the chips, the data centers, all these things that billions and billions of dollars are being funneled into this. And that was where the hype was coming from. It's like, where are we going with this?
Right.
And his conversation was more about how those tech companies are sort of out in pursuit of gathering all the world's information and putting it into a model so they can have this competitive model.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it got exciting for me, because then it was like, well, that's not the best way forward. The best way forward is more narrow, more industry, more custom, more unique, company private data, unique AI,
Mm-hmm.
as specific to the problem and the business that they want to solve for. And
And then you said light bulb. I'm doing that.
light bulb, yeah. And that's when I came running
Yeah.
in, and
Yeah. You're like,
and I went to my AI
yeah.
and I prompted that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did it in the meeting.
You did.
What was that
Did
like for
live.
you to go through that? Like to see, like, first of all, I'm like, let me just say something. I kept going and going.
Yeah. You're like,
And then you're like, oh my gosh,
yeah. And so essentially you,
should we read the thing?
I mean,
Or
yeah.
no, I don't have access to it.
Yeah, I
I-
mean, so essentially, what happened is you came in and we say this all the time. We're like, let's use our product. Let's be the best users of our product, right? So, then you went into the AI and you were basically like, here's my brain dump. You were still fired up from hearing it, which is so great because I feel like this happens to people a lot where they're like, I just heard something amazing. I want to get it on paper. I want to write about it. I want to blog about it. And then a few days go by and they're just it's not as fresh. They're not as amped. And it turns kind of stale, right? So you prompted your AI and you just said, here was my takeaway from what I heard this morning. Write me an article, write me a post, write me this, write me that. And it did. It did it all live and it did it all fast. And it was great.
Yeah.
And it's something compelling. And this is what's interesting is that I feel like a lot of people are, say, blogging for the sake of blogging these days, just to get something out, to generate SEO, to optimize their SEO, all of that. What you did was a blog that someone actually would want to read, which I feel like a lot of people using a certain, GPT or whatever it is, they're getting a blog and they're having to either revise it or it might not be like a compelling article. This was, right? We were like,
Yeah.
wow. And you even said it. You were like, I wouldn't erase a word. This would have come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the future of AI looks like. So how did it get there? I think that's what our audience will want to know.
Yeah. So I think we should put a link to that article. And there's not been one. Oh, the only word that we needed to change was it capitalized
Mm-hmm.
nectarflow because it was at the beginning of the sentence.
Right.
So logically, the large language, but this would be how you would write. You'd
Yeah.
capitalize the first letter of a sentence.
Yeah.
So we need to go back in and train it and say, hey, listen, even in instances
Mm-hmm.
where nectarflow is the first word of a sentence, it's our brand name and we want it to always appear in low-level characters.
Yeah.
Do that, right? And so that
Yeah.
will happen once.
Yeah.
So
But that's the human element you always talk about.
Yeah.
AI still needs people. It needs people. It's not always perfect, but man, is it close.
Yeah.
It's getting closer and closer.
I think that, in our model, we believe, as you know, people begin and end the process. So in this case, I was able to tune into content that I knew the people that we serve to support care about,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm bringing that back, right? So it made my ability to bring that back much more valuable,
Right.
right? And much quicker. And to the point where I then also have control to determine once it does its job, that does it look, is it in the right voice? Does it
Yeah.
have the right links, all that stuff. So that's what I really liked about this process. The other piece of it, to your question, is, well, how did all that happen? So what we're doing is we're using large language models that are very good at summarizing, very good at character creation and generating images and text and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're pairing it with what we know to be true about nectarflow, what we know to be true about the customers that they serve, what we know to be true about the persona that we want to spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this case, it sort of already knows that. It knows our company values. It knows those things. It knows the website links. It has that information because we've been able to provide it
Right.
in an environment that is secure and safe, right? And it's not exposing it to public data. In addition to that, and this is where the people part is, I come in with a unique prompt to direct it,
Mm-hmm.
which is what it's almost as if I got to the office and went to my professional writer, my professional SEO person, my professional graphic designer, my professional copywriter that comes up with titles and quotes.
Yeah.
And then, gosh, I know I'm missing stuff in here. Social media.
Oh yeah.
And it knows how to write for LinkedIn, and it knows how to write for X, and it knows how to write for Facebook, and an email marketer,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can put the link from the article that it made in the email. So then you or the team can
Yeah.
make that more visible quicker.
You trained
So
it to pull a quote.
it pulled a quote. So, for example, in the workflow, it first writes the article
Mm-hmm.
and everything starts there. And then it wrote that article from its base knowledge of obviously what nectarflow knows to be true and what it serves and who it serves. And then it used the directive that I gave it
Mm-hmm.
after I listened to CNBC. So there's no way it would have known that because there's an invisible AI right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the invisible AI is not everybody has spoken into a microphone or written things, which means there's a lot of magic left to be discovered in the world because not everybody has created things that has been
Content that it can pull
is
from.
part of
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I listened to an interview this morning on CNBC in the radio. I took that, prompted it, and now it's now in an article.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that article is going to serve real time today. Like this was relevant today.
Yeah.
So if I sent that email out, it would ring true if somebody was like, man, this seems like
Really relevant topic.
you're in my head.
Like I've heard this before.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is what's valuable about AI today is it's the community leaders
Yeah.
that know like everything is going to be this new thing. It's the power of bringing people together
Yeah.
and untapping that. So every leader listening right now has that. When they go to a conference, there's something that they're listening to that is relevant to their company, their goals, their investment objectives, and their people. That's the magic,
Mm-hmm.
right? What does Lauren's great experience, right?
Yeah.
And applied in context to this thing, right? So it writes the article.
Mm-hmm.
Then there we create a title from the article.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the title. So we're like, create a title from what it just wrote.
Oh.
And then we create a slug, which is really simple to be like, anything after the /
Right.
in the .com or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's strategically that or structured that way so that search engines draw higher relevancy in ranking that article above others because of the keywords from the article that also match the URL.
Right.
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 And then so we create a title, create a slug, and then we have our AI then say, hey, by the way, look at this article that you created and tell me how long it would take to read it. So now we're outputting, it's going to take 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have structured data that we can then incorporate it into the blog post that says it's going to take 5 minutes to read this article.
Yeah.
We used our AI to determine that after it wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come up with a quote because you asked me about hey, I need a quote. And
That's
I was
the new
having
social
lunch
thing,
and I'm like,
right?
I threw out a quote to you and I'm like, this would be interesting. So now we're going to write it. It's going to come up with a quote relative to a quote that exists on the internet that is cite and sourced from a real person and verified,
Mm-hmm.
and then tied back to being relevant about what's happening in the article.
Right.
So now the social media team has something to post and promote that ties into all this.
Yeah.
Right. And then we take it to in this case, we're promoting or publishing to Webflow.
Mm-hmm.
So we're moving all this into the draft mode, into the right pages, to where it's the images in there, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a status on the front end that says, okay, here's the article, here's all the stuff, but we're generating the social media right now. Just stand by. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then it goes to LinkedIn and it writes how we've trained it, like how it needs to write in that format from the
Catchy, and
copywriter.
It's got a hook. It's got all the things.
Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, all that. Short form on Twitter X. Can I say X anymore? Do people? I mean, I think it's.
I think it's still okay. Yeah.
And then an email that has the link to the web that it created with the slug that it created.
Yeah.
So now we can message and nurture our audience. They can get them on social media, and then it created these podcast notes.
Yeah.
And we are following
Yeah.
the podcast talking about the article
Yeah.
we made. So not every customer would have a podcast, but we created a podcast producer
Mm-hmm.
that said from this article, right? And it was all this stuff.
Yeah.
Create some podcast show notes. We gave it some examples. Now we have a podcast segment.
Yeah. And it tells you exactly how to structure it. That would be a great listen, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I need to break this down again, just so because you went to MIT, you're highly methodical. You understand the back end for a front end user, what this actually means is you had one idea that was fresh on your mind from something you heard, period, which is what everybody's like fired up, gets fired up. They're like, I have to make content around this.
Hmm.
But it takes them a whole week to produce every element that would feed the content, right? What you're saying. So, and I've even seen you go as far as to literally make a Slack to yourself that ties into this AI where you could say, heard a great thing today, here's what it was.
Yeah.
And then it writes all this content for you
Yep.
around that one thought. It's like having one of those little pocket memos and just saying an idea. And then all of a sudden you've got a blog, you've got social posts, you've got a podcast episode, you have every piece of content you could possibly think of to make
Hmm.
because you had one thought and one idea, which is just wild.
Yes, and you know what's actually happening there is custom experts or agents. So
Mm-hmm.
historically, top level leaders and CEOs, limited time, but they knew that the more they were present with their team, they could lead, create greater impact for their company and be more strategic and
Mm-hmm.
relationships, all that stuff. And so, you know, for 30, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, I don't know how long, we've recognized that there's value in having like an admin assistant or an executive assistant or somebody handling the things
Mm-hmm.
that someone else can handle.
Yeah.
So now what I just demonstrated to you is that without paying 12 people, I was able to create an agent for copywriting, create an agent for social media marketing, create an agent for graphic design,
Mm-hmm.
create an agent for article writing, right?
Yeah.
And what that means to the people that are listening and they're employed is that they now can have access to a team of people that can help them do their job better, so
Mm-hmm.
they can lean into those moments like I leaned into listening to the article
Yeah.
or the radio interview.
Yeah.
So that's what's I don't think people have realized that can be unleashed
Mm-hmm.
is these custom agents specifically for the roles
Yeah.
and the tasks that need to get done. And CEOs today have to be just excited because now imagine going into your employees and being able to equip them all with someone to help them
Yeah.
move this quick.
Well, and that's exactly right. And here's, someone might hear what you just said and be like, okay, so you basically now have a copywriter, a social media expert, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is, I'm a marketer. I should be the first one, shaking in my boots right now because I've seen how all of this can be automated. But if I'm being completely honest, I've lived all those roles. Social media, like there are a lot of those tasks are incredibly tedious, and I wouldn't say are ones that most people even enjoy doing. Like, I don't think a lot of blog writers are waking, unless that is your profession and it's a fashion blog. I think there's a lot of respect there. But if it's something where write me a blog daily to increase my SEO so that I'm the first thing that comes up in Google, no one's going to be excited about that blog, right? They're just going to do it. And especially when we talk about the world of multifamily, there are so many hats that people have to wear already. So what you really should be doing when you're thinking about AI is, if I had my own assistant to do the mundane tasks that I can't stand in my job, here's what I would outsource. And that's like a great place to start. And that really is where it is starting, is those low-hanging fruit elements, scanning documents and compiling them into a spreadsheet and pulling certain bits out of them. Like those types of tasks will and should be automated and be AI. Right.
Yeah. I mean, think about due diligence. Imagine being able to drop a lease file into a folder
Mm-hmm.
and have our agent specifically train it on what that company wants to pull out. If it's lease terms, lease
Mm-hmm.
expiration dates, security deposit, data on rent price or market lease, all that stuff. And so there's just numerous applications. And I think that's really where the custom stuff is. The custom agent is like, well, what's really unique to you and how does that work?
Yeah.
So, looking at my notes here, I already talked about the solutions tailored for unique business, and that's kind of the workflow that played out. You mentioned writing a blog. The reality is, historically, the person with the idea wasn't maybe the person writing the blog, or if it's outsourced because employee turnover is such that they're not doing that because it's hard work,
Right.
it's not consistent,
Mm-hmm.
they're shifting in their responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But now you give people, like you mentioned, the Slack message or a simple way
Yeah.
to be able to direct something in such a way that it's inspired by the people doing the work
Yeah.
instead of an outsourced consultant looking to post recipes or generic vanilla stuff that
Yeah.
isn't readable, or it is readable, but it's like it got it done, but like, does someone really want to engage with this?
Yeah. It's written the way I would want it to be written.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it did, like you said, that what it came up with and handed to you was almost verbatim in your voice, which was pretty amazing. Like if you had written that yourself, it would have been pretty darn close to exactly what
I
came out.
hate writing.
I do.
I'd rather talk and say, like, can you transcribe that? But
Yeah, same.
um, I don't ever have to worry about where the commas are and
Hmm.
all that stuff.
Absolutely. But I think about the power that this gives a content creator. Really, if you think about like someone who is scared right now, who's, like I said, a marketer like me. I look at this and I say the ability to wake up, have a brilliant thought in my head and just prompt something to create all of that content for me so that all I have to be doing is coming up with the brilliant ideas and then reviewing everything that it gives me. I mean, I think that's a huge win, really, for efficiency, for so many purposes.
Yeah.
So,
One of the greatest copywriters on the planet used to, you know, write copy for compelling brands, but one of the things he would do is he would ride buses and spend time where people were.
mm,
So, you've got like the New York, Madison Avenue ad agencies and all the ads that we've seen historically over time.
hmm
But what the reason why he was one of the top writers, I guess, to move brands forward was because he understood the hearts, the pains, the desires of the people that were reading and consuming these things.
yeah,
And the only way to do that is getting close as you can to the customer,
yeah,
right? So because I'm chairing the Multifamily Innovation Council, I mean, clearly I'm hearing this every week. I'm hearing things like priorities and challenges, all that stuff. And
hmm
so when I'm tuning into a CNBC article or podcast or news segment, I'm really close. I have my ear close to what our audience wants to have solved and wants to do.
hmm
And so if I can just take something from that and inspire AI, it can't get that in any other place.
yeah,
And that's where people make the difference.
absolutely,
So I would not, 1000% things are going to change. 1000%. And you heard, and we won't talk about it right now, but you heard our plan
yeah,
to unlock and make a lot of people do really well in this industry and
yeah,
beyond. I think those that get out in front of it and look at AI as like language or, you know, an operating principle
hmm
that if you want to be a great, valuable employee, if you can walk into an organization and provide it faster, better responses, better work, supreme intelligence, and you have this sort of team behind you, then you're going to be able to do your job better.
right,
And you're less distracted and fearful of like what's going to happen and how's this going to shake down. And you're not in reaction mode. You're in tackle mode. You're in attack mode. And that company would benefit from that activity.
right,
So to me, I believe people will still want to be around other people. It's the companies and the people that bring people together and do more interesting things and unlock the true sort of self of what people are.
right,
Like you've said a couple times, you're a marketer and stuff, and I think over the next year and a half, we're going to figure out we aren't who we think we
yeah.
are.
I
Like,
might
we're
be
more
more than that. I've never really been an entrepreneur until I've watched you. I'm like, maybe I am interested in investing. Maybe I am interested in being an entrepreneur myself. I've never even thought of that as an option for myself, and I would say most people probably haven't.
Yeah, and I was an entrepreneur for so long, and multifamily will make you safe, which
hmm
makes you risky,
Yeah.
and ultimately, a lot of the things that we do with AI and even just first principles thinking can be simplified, but at the end of the day, companies are always going to need to grow,
Yeah.
and companies are going to need to serve customers and create value.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just be focused on that, that's the difference maker. And if you're thinking that your role isn't going to change, then you're going to be blindsided, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
by but again, going back to marketing, it's like it's not necessarily the strategy anymore,
Right.
because and I did some research around all the companies like McKinsey and IBM and Accenture and these companies that are going to market. And when I did this research, I think I made a video and I showed you
Mm-hmm.
in our Slack channel. I could never hire anybody that could get that kind of information that fast, research it, source it, summarize it for me,
Yeah.
and tee it up like that. There's just not a human
Mm-hmm.
in the world that I would ever, or I just say, well, I'm going to talk to Sarah. Sarah's in marketing, and I ask Sarah, hey, Sarah, what is this and that? And then it's like Google,
Right.
or maybe they use AI, you know what I mean? So I think that when we can put aside this idea that our knowledge is the power and that it's now a game changer, it's because everybody's got the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, who am I as a leader and what can I get done
Right.
that drives more revenue for the company or creates that great experience for that customer? Like it's the action takers
Mm-hmm.
that are going to win,
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
And
you said something really smart earlier, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to botch it now. But
oh,
you said something along the lines of the future is people who are doing something, essentially measuring it, and then coming up with the right outcomes or the right route from there.
yeah,
And so I think thinking of it that way, where, you know, that is the future. If somebody can literally run tests now against, if you're making content daily like this that comes from a great idea, my job now is to say, well, did that perform? Is live streaming to Instagram doing anything? That's now me. That's my role now. What's working, what's not,
yeah,
what's hitting, what's not, and you are able to test and run. And like you said, everybody's saying this right now. Don't be afraid to fail. Fall flat on your face and
yeah,
see what happens. And because we have the power to do that, this isn't like our one piece of content a week that we've worked and slaved over
right,
anymore. This
right,
is like throw it out the wall and see what sticks.
yeah.
And that is what everybody who is successful is doing.
Yeah, and I don't know how
Truly.
long we've been on the podcast,
Yeah.
but I walked into your office. I'm like, "You want to go on a podcast?"
Yeah, and I'm like, I
You're
don't
like,
know,
"I
my
don't
hair's a
know."
little okay,
And so
sure.
this is a result
Yeah.
of that, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, you mentioned the thing that I said about where do people fit into the process, and that was that's where you set the vision, you set the strategies, right? We set the goals, we measure the goals, and you lead with people through this process.
Mm-hmm.
And leadership is so powerful today because everybody's feeling a little anxious about this stuff. So if you can be that leader that understands these things
Yeah.
and you can confidently communicate, like, it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Come
Mm-hmm.
with me. Like, let's do this. And it creates a scenario where people have they feel more control over their outcomes versus like what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? They're just kind of waiting for the reaction mode. But it was in that org chart where at that Stanford research where we talked about the org chart being really the most fundamental revolutionary technology over the last 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, people in organizations only can only take on so much capacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can, if you're in a meeting from 1 to 2, you're in that meeting. You can't be in another meeting from 1 to 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to have, in greater scales, more people to do those. And you just think about that org chart. With AI, it demolishes that whole organizational structure in that way because it can cross those sort of buckets of people.
Right.
And that's where, but what it can't do, or it shouldn't do, which is measure. I mean, it can create information and stats and data and stuff like that, but it's going to be for the person, the human being, to go like, is impacting the business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
which is I think it's an exciting time.
I think it's exciting too because I really think about how many people I know, and when I ask them, are you incredibly happy in your day-to-day tasks and what you're doing, and or are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling like you're able to take ownership of any decision that's being made in your job? And really, I think this change is going to force that to happen. It's going to force people to automate the tasks that are holding them back, that are becoming redundant and not growing them as individuals or as experts in their field. And I think that what it's going to do is it's going to allow space for people to have to discover who they are and what their specialties are. And like you said, I might not be a marketer. It's just what I've known. And maybe when some of that is automated, I step back and I say, wow, I want to start dabbling in this. I want to start dabbling in that. And so I think it's actually a cool, unique time where people can explore different elements of what they do and what they love. And yeah.
You know, I completely agree with you. And as you mentioned that, I wrote down the word variance because one of my biggest challenges is I'm curious about these things. I'm also building things. I have software engineers, developers on payroll. I'm talking to smart people about this stuff. I'm also in the room with some of the brightest minds in AI in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring that back to our innovation council so then we can make that more valuable. That's the pursuit of that. But in doing so, I just have this excitement over what's possible because the challenges that are before us can be solved with technology.
Right.
And the exciting part for the people is it's not enough to have the technology or the system because, this is Dr. Westerman, he mentioned this in our at MIT, which is companies or technology moves fast because technology can be programmed. Companies move slowly because people are involved, right? So you got fears, you got process, you got delays, you got stories,
Right.
all that stuff.
Right.
That's where the opportunity is in the leadership piece. But I make the assumption that everybody else has also been on that journey and done that work. So where somebody is today, as I get excited and I talk about, oh, this is all possible, they don't have access to nectarflow.com yet, right? They don't have access to their own custom agent. They don't. They haven't built it, so they don't understand what's actually happening behind the curtains. And so they don't have the context to even know that, oh, I could solve this problem with AI.
Right.
That's not a problem today because the way that we've structured this is this was the McKinsey and the IBM and the Accenture and these KPMGs, all these big consulting companies, is you're not going to want to spend $20 million or $2 million a year with a consultant to then tell you about how to spend money with certain consultants. So we at nectarflow can be that outside innovation arm that can say, hey, here's where you are. That's where you start.
Yeah.
You begin here. And it's unique to you and what you want to accomplish for your reasons, not ours.
Yeah.
And move them through a learning environment and an experience environment and supporting them with technology, software developers, business orchestrators, those that have gone before them that understand like, oh, this problem can be solved this way.
Right.
Have you thought about this? That, I think, is where the opportunity is. And that can be unleashed within a company too.
Absolutely.
So there could be a leader in a company going, I want to be that for my company.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are. I'm sure there are.
There are.
I mean, there are.
Right.
There have to be.
Right. And so we hope to bring a lot of those things together for those individuals to work on a platform, work faster, but also have this depth of team and range of services and opportunities to do the things that that matter financially for an organization. Because it's not enough to just be like, oh, this is cute and we want to do this. It's like, look, there are companies going out of business right now, right? There are people losing jobs because they haven't taken certain things seriously. And now it's like, this is your wake up call to say, this is an opportunity where you can be a different leader. And guess what? Everybody's at the same level playing field right now.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I got 20 years in finance.
Right.
And they've done you
We're
are
all
at a
exploring
massive
this.
opportunity. I don't care if you're a leasing agent or a general manager or CEO, like it's a real opportunity.
Yeah. Everyone's exploring it. And I mean, we probably need to wrap it up here, but what is interesting too that I learned coming in, knowing virtually nothing outside of what the general public probably did about AI, is that it's not only AI, it's AI plus automations, plus, and it's almost like each element was missing the other. So we had a lot of automation tools out there, we had a lot of automations built that were doing good work. But that AI element into the automation plus an integration, it's like there's
Yeah.
the magic, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the piece that people need to understand, is that it's a combination of a lot of things. Some of it already exists. There's a lot of automation already happening. But adding that AI element into that, and then adding integration into that, that's where the magic really happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just, that's a bow tie. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a great thing because you can do each one of these things and one may bring more value than the other, but when you put them all together, um, it's, uh, it's a platform that serves you, that you can bring anything else you want into it. So versus I'm on Microsoft and they want me to be in Microsoft, or I'm on Google and they want me to play over there, and
Yeah.
I'm on iCloud and Apple and they want me to play there. It's like you can be anywhere you want to be,
As
you know?
long as you know
Yeah,
how to connect it all,
yeah, exactly.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was a great conversation.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it. And yeah, we'll follow some more about what's next. We do have a webinar series coming up.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we'll put a link in the description on how to access that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we intend to do is have an opportunity to let people sort of learn in public, explore some of these possibilities, and every week will be different. Right now, we're going to do it every Wednesday, but they can register for the upcoming one,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll probably from that develop what we talk about in the next one, and really at scale get in front of some people to help support them, you know, answering questions, that type of stuff. And then, of course, if people want to do a demo or get involved, they want to bring thoughtful, strategic AI affordably into their business, I would say just nectarflow.com, book a demo. I think there's a button like talk to an automation expert, or
Yep. Yep.
click on that. And then you can spend time with us. And we'd love to work with companies that are trying to make their business better.
Sounds great. I love it.
All right. For that, we are out. That was a episode inspired by AI and executed by us. So we'll see you in the next one.